What is up, bros and broettes? I'm Inkslasher, and today we are going to be talking about what I believe is the most underrated weapon in Call of Duty World War II. Because as we know, in Call of Duty, they change weapons all the time. They buff them, they nerf them, everything in between. And since the beginning of the game, the weapons have changed drastically in Call of Duty World War II. And this weapon that we're talking about today recently got a small buff that what I believe makes it one of the best weapons in the game. And throughout this video, we'll talk about why, we're going to compare it to other weapons, and hopefully by the end of this video, you're able to give this weapon a shot and let me know what you think. So the weapon that I'm obviously talking about here is the M2 carbine. Now, as you can see by the gameplay, this is a very slow firing, high damage weapon, and I find in any Call of Duty game, a weapon like this, players either really love it or absolutely hate it. And that's kind of why I think it's one of the more underrated weapons, but specifically because it has a really low fire rate. A lot of players who maybe aren't as good or don't have a good enough aim will find this weapon to be bad, because if you miss one bullet with this weapon, all of a sudden that time to kill gets longer and longer and longer because of that slow rate of fire. However, if you are accurate with this weapon, which is very easy to do so because it has a very low recoil, you kill people incredibly quickly if you're accurate with the weapon. And that's going to be kind of like the key to this entire video. You have to be accurate with this weapon. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's actually talk about some of the stats for this weapon. So one of the best stats for this weapon is the damage profile. It's going to be 3 bullets to kill up close and 4 bullets at long range. And by long range, I mean incredibly long range. So it's going to be a 3 bullet kill up until 50 meters. If you use advanced rifling, it's going to be 3 bullet kill infinitely, but really most of the gunfights you are going to get into are simply going to be within 50 meters, so you don't really have to worry about that too much. But what this means is it's always 3 bullets to kill. That's an incredibly good stat. Other weapons like this in other Call of Duty games include probably what you're most familiar with from Black Ops 3, the BRM, which was an LMG, or as far as an assault rifle went in Black Ops 3, the only one that had that long of a 3 bullet kill range was a Shiva. That being said, the Shiva also had 2 bullet kill ranges, but the only one that was that far was the Shiva. Another one that was kind of close to this was a DLC weapon in Black Ops 3, and that was the M16, and I considered the M16 to actually be one of the best weapons in Black Ops 3. So the point I'm getting at is the damage profile and range are incredibly good on the M2 carbine. Now after this we have rate of fire, and that was the thing that was recently buffed in one of the most recent patches. So before the buff, it was 441 RPM. After the buff, it's 462 RPM. It doesn't sound like a big difference, but really it is quite large, and really, the M2 carbine didn't even need this buff to be a good weapon, and after it, it is just that much better. So let's compare this briefly to a weapon that I consider, and many consider, to be the best in the game, and that is the Volk Sturmgewehr. So the Volk Sturmgewehr has kind of got buffed, nerfed, and everything in between as well, but the difference is the one big thing that they nerfed on it was the range. So what this means is that the time to kill for the M2 carbine up until 50 meters is 259 milliseconds, whereas the Volk Sturmgewehr's time to kill up until 25 meters is 253 milliseconds. What this means is that they almost have the exact same time to kill. The difference between the two of them is 6 milliseconds, which is 0.006 seconds, so really you can't see it to the naked eye, which is absolutely insane. And the M2 carbine sustains that time to kill up until 50 meters, where the Volk Sturmgewehr only has that until 25 meters. So up until this point, all of those stats are pretty decent, but this gun really gets amazing when you add certain attachments to it, one of which is high caliber. So what high caliber does is give you extra headshot damage. What this means is that this weapon will become a 2 bullet kill if you simply get 1 headshot while using high caliber. What this means is it halves the time to kill. So instead of 259 milliseconds, you're basically looking at 129 milliseconds. So like I said, half the amount of time to kill. What this means is that this weapon, if you get 1 headshot with high caliber, you're looking at one of the fastest time to kills in the game. The only thing that's really going to beat you is one-shot kill weapons like snipers and shotguns. So what I'm getting at here is the time to kill in core modes is incredibly good. Not to mention, if you're a hardcore player, you probably already know this, but the M2 carbine is already a 1 bullet kill at any single range, which means this is absolutely one of the best weapons in hardcore. Now, not to mention some of the other stats, the smaller smaller stats for the M2 carbine are also very, very good, one of which is the hip spread. The hip spread is the second best out of all of the assault rifles. In fact, the only assault rifle that has a better hip spread than it is the M1941, or the Johnson, which is, of course, almost like an SMG in World War II, if you guys have used that weapon at all. So it kind of makes sense that that one would have a smaller hip spread. On top of that, its aim down sights and sprint out times are some of the fastest for the assault rifles in the game, at 220 milliseconds or 250 milliseconds for a sprint out time. After that, we have the reload speed of 1.69 seconds, which is actually just right in the middle of the road for the assault rifles. And then finally, we have the one bad stat, and that is the magazine size. So the magazine for this weapon is 15 rounds. If you use extended mags, which is almost necessary on this weapon, it's 22 rounds. So even with extended mags, you're looking at a pretty small magazine, but remember, it does have that slower rate of fire, which means you're not going to quite burn through that magazine as fast as you would with something like the Volkssturmgewehr. So why do I think this weapon is underrated? Why, if I'm saying that this weapon has such good time to kill and is just all around a good weapon, why do so few people use it? Well, first of all, it's a DLC weapon. Not everyone who plays the game actually has the weapon, so that's one good reason. The second reason is that people tend to stay away from slower fire rate weapons, and there's a reason for that. And the simple explanation is, if you miss a bullet, it takes that much longer to shoot. Where if you look in the past at Call of Duty games, a weapon like the ACR or the Peacekeeper in Black Ops 3, or something along those lines that has a higher rate of fire, that is super accurate, and if you miss a bullet, you get a quick follow-up bullet, a lot of people are drawn to that. It may not have the fast time to kill, and it may not be the best weapon in the game, but what these weapons are extremely easy to use. Whereas a weapon like the M2 carbine is more difficult to use, you can't miss as many bullets, you have to be super accurate with it, but if you do use it well, you're rewarded extremely well by killing people quickly and having a good weapon that you can use. But the drawback is you really have to be accurate. A very extreme example of this would be the difference between an assault rifle and a sniper rifle. Yes, sniper rifles are harder to aim, they're harder to use, but if you do manage to hit the enemy, it drops them immediately. Whereas with assault rifles, you have to hit 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 bullets to actually kill someone, but they're much easier to use because they're fully automatic and your follow-up shots come that much quicker. It's the same difference between something like the Volkssturmgewehr and the M2 carbine. The M2 carbine does more damage, you have to hit less bullets, but you have to be more accurate because those follow-up bullets are going to take longer to come out of your weapon and hit the enemy. So the other question I wanted to answer is, what attachments should you use with this weapon? Really, there's two that are a must, and aside from that, you can kind of choose what you'd like. The two that are a must are, like I said, high caliber and extended mags, because extended mags expands that 15 round magazine to a 22 round magazine. It's almost necessary. And the other thing, high caliber reduces that time to kill by half, so you really need that high caliber. Other than that, I like to use a reflex sight. If not that, you can use a grip if you find that there's too much recoil. I don't think there is. Other options are quick draw to snap on target a little faster. The quick draw, if you are playing hardcore, is necessary, but when you're playing regular core, generally this weapon has a good enough time to kill that you don't really need it. So ladies and gents, that is what I believe is the most underrated weapon in Call of Duty World War II. If you have this weapon and you haven't tried it out, definitely check it out. I think it's really on par with many of the weapons that people consider to be the best in the game. So definitely check this one out. But guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, it would be very greatly appreciated if you could hit that like button. Throughout the rest of this week, we have some Black Ops 4 videos coming. On top of that, there's going to be some more talk about the best weapons in the game for Call of Duty World War II, as I do think they have changed in the past couple weeks with new weapons being added, some weapon balancing, and I think some variants between what I believe to be the best shotgun in the game as well. So we'll be talking about all of that, including Black Ops 4 throughout the week, so stay tuned for that. Be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on all the videos. But guys, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace out.